Thank you very much for joining us tonight at the Minnesotans Military Appreciation Dinner. My name is Paul Douglas, and I am, in fact, taking credit for today's record 64 degrees in the Twin Cities. This is not a coincidence. I had to pay extra on Veterans Day for 64 degrees. We could be hip deep in snow right now. In fact, I was telling some folks, today marks the anniversary of the Armistice Day blizzard. 65 years ago tonight, the rain was changing to ice and snow, and before it was all done, 20-foot snowdrifts in parts of central Minnesota. It took weeks for them to clear the roads. That's what can happen this time of year, so I take nothing for granted. I can predict only one thing with rare total accuracy. There is a 100% probability of Senator John McCain. Yep. That, and I can also predict this is going to be a memorable and a very moving evening for all of us. I'm very pleased to be with you tonight. As you know, WCCO TV is a very proud sponsor of Minnesotans Military Appreciation Fund, MMAF for short. We are delighted to be a part of this new, nonpartisan, nonprofit, grassroots group of individuals and businesses. MMAF has provided a way for all Minnesotans of all beliefs and backgrounds to join together in showing their appreciation for their neighbors serving in combat. What an outstanding way to show the rest of the nation the values that all Minnesotans embody. Please know that more than 90% of the monies raised tonight will go directly to the soldiers and their families. It's just a very simple way, yet a very effective way to show them that you appreciate their time, their efforts, and their work. It's something they will always remember. Please join me in welcoming MMAF's founders, the folks who had the vision, the foresight to make all this happen. Nothing good happens by accident. And we want to rally the state behind this great cause and organize the event tonight. Please welcome MMAF founders Gene Sitt, Denny Schulstad, Skip Kryshek, and Michael Gorman. Also with us tonight are two of Minnesota's esteemed senators. Welcome with me, Senators Mark Dayton and Norm Coleman. And what an amazing honor it is tonight to be joined by two true American heroes. That word gets tossed around a lot, but tonight we are in the presence of greatness. Former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and Minnesota resident, General John W. Vessey. And our guest of honor, Vietnam veteran and Arizona Senator, John McCain. Welcome, gentlemen. Welcome. People have asked, why hold a program such as MMAF? The answer is very, very simple. We are Minnesotans, and our neighbors serving in the military, along with their families, are enduring hardships and making great sacrifices on our behalf every single day. This program is designed as a simple and modest way for us to all say thank you to these individuals and these families. Tonight we need look no further than the tables among us to say thank you. Please join me in welcoming and saying thanks to members of the Minnesota military and their families. They will be sitting at various tables tonight. Welcome. Big round of applause. Now, I want you to notice here in the front, there is a table set for one, but nobody is going to be sitting at that table tonight. It is in honor of Minnesota's POWs and MIAs. I encourage you to read the program tonight to learn more about what this table symbolizes. Some very eloquent words indeed, and you will be touched. Now, would you please rise for the presentation of colors and for the national anthem to be sung by our very own Metropolitan Boys Choir.
Present arms. Order arms. Right, face.
You folks, you kids did a great job, and thank you for, yes, thank you. For one horrifying second, I thought I would have to sing the national anthem. I thought that'd be a very bad thing. And now for the invocation, leading us in prayer from Wilmer, Senator, and Brigadier General Dean Johnson. Dean?
Will you pray with me? Lord, this night we are gathered as citizens of this great state of Minnesota to pause and remember first our veterans, those who have lost their life for the sake of our country. We remember tonight those who were injured and now reside in our VA hospitals, our nursing homes, confined to their own homes because of injury, because of old age. Lord, tonight we remember our brothers and sisters in uniform, those in Kuwait, Afghanistan, Iraq, other nations of the world. Surround them with your love. Protect them, Lord. Be with their spouses, their children, and their grandchildren as they worry, as they pray, as they hope. Lord, tonight we ask that you would grant courage and wisdom to our political leaders, the President, the Vice President, the members of the Congress, especially Senator McCain. We thank you for the years of service of General Vessey. Lord, be with Governor Pawlenty and the trade mission members as they travel. We come to you, Lord, tonight in thanks in this Thanksgiving season for our state and nation, for its natural resources, the beauty of the forests and the lakes and the streams and the richness of farmlands. Lord, you have blessed us as a nation, as a people. Allow us to be grateful and thankful. Tonight, Lord, we remember those who have lost their lives, whose family members are here with heavy hearts and wanting. Lord, you have now gathered unto yourself these men and women as they asleep in the Lord. Care for their souls. And now, Lord, we thank you for the food and drink that you provide for us each and every day of our lives, that nourish our bodies for work and responsibility. And we come to you with our personal prayers and petitions, knowing that you will answer in due time and due season. Amen.
Thank you, Senator Johnson. One individual that could not be with us tonight is Governor Tim Pawlenty. He expresses deep regret for not being able to make it. He does have a good excuse. He's in China for a very, very significant trade mission. He did, however, want to send this video message.
We all know that freedom isn't free, but not everyone pays the same price. By their own choosing, our Minnesota military families are shouldering a huge burden to protect us. Sadly, some have paid the ultimate price, while still others suffer from the wounds of war, while others sacrifice in so many other ways. Our peace and security here at home are enhanced because the men and women of our military confront the danger of terrorism overseas. We all benefit tremendously. Nothing makes me prouder as governor or as a Minnesotan than the courage and skill of Minnesota's Guard, Reserve, and active duty personnel. Some of the greatest days for me as governor have been spent with our military families here and overseas. For many Americans, the memory of September 11th is fading, and the struggles in Afghanistan and Iraq are minute-long stories on the evening news. But for our military families, the war on terrorism is on their minds every hour of every day. For those who are in harm's way and for those who wait in anguish here at home, we must provide our undiminished support. These brave Minnesotans, these brave Americans deserve our heartfelt thanks and our faithful prayers. That's why, in an attempt to remind us of their sacrifices, Minnesota will soon issue new Support Our Troops license plates that will hopefully expand our visible and financial support for our veterans and military families, just as all of you are doing this evening. My thanks to Gene Sitt and his team of distinguished citizens for putting this evening together, and to a great American hero, Senator John McCain, for taking the time to share a personal message with all of you. You give us all a chance to say to Minnesota's military families what's truly in our hearts. We honor you, we thank you, we will support you no matter what. We know your sacrifice is making life better for us all. Thank you, may God bless you, and may God continue to bless this great nation with the men and women who serve in our United States military.
Thank you very much, Governor Pawlenty. Ralph Waldo Emerson once said that a hero is no braver than an ordinary man, but he is braver 5 minutes longer. Tonight, we honor heroes in our midst and heroes that can only be with us in spirit. And I am genuinely humbled and honored to be able to introduce our next guests, humbled by their sacrifice, humbled by their coming here tonight, their bravery to share their story with us. These people are very courageous, unimaginably courageous. With us tonight is Merrilee and Daniel Carlson, St. Paul parents of Army Sergeant Michael C. Carlson, a young man killed in Iraq on January 24th of this year.
I'd like to thank you all so much for your love and support. Your being here tonight really means a lot to the military families. And the one thing that we have found through this challenge of this past year is how much the state of Minnesota loves their troops and their families, and the world loves us. So thank you. This being November 11th and Veterans Day, I would be remiss if I did not start by giving my thanks and recognition to all who have served to create, defend, and protect our country and our way of life, our freedom. From the patriots of the Revolutionary War who had a dream, to those of World Wars I and II who saw that dream challenged, and to those of Vietnam and Iraq who saw the dream extended one more time to foreign soil. These fine men and women have given us a way of life that we often take for granted. September 11th was a wake-up call for my generation and our children. Safety, security, and our freedoms does not come without a price. We give thanks that so many are willing to pay it. On behalf of a grateful nation, my humble thanks to all who have served and are serving. My son Michael Carlson loves sports. He grew up on the east side of St. Paul, where he attended Cretin-Durham Hall, and he played football, part of the 1999 championship football team, and he loved to wrestle. During the spring of his senior year, 2000, he wrote a credo, a paper about what he believed and what he wanted in his life. We have shared this credo with the world, not because we want Mike out there, but because Mike eloquently put to paper what most of the men and women of our military believe in their hearts. As I read a portion of that credo to you, please think of the men and women you know who are serving or have served our country. I love sports. I love football, wrestling, weightlifting, skiing, and hockey. I love the thrill of competition, the roar of the crowds, the agony on the faces of your opponents as the final seconds tick off the clock. However, I don't want to do it as a profession. I think it would be fun for a little while, then it would get boring. I guess the point that I am trying to make is that when I am on my deathbed, what am I going to look back on? Will it be 30 years of playing a game that in reality means nothing? Or will it be 30 years of fighting crime and protecting the country of all enemies, foreign and domestic? I want my life to account for something more than just a game. In life, there are no winners. Everyone eventually loses their life. I only have so much time. I can't waste it with a game. I don't want those close to me to look at me and tell me that I was good at a game. I want to be good at life. I want to be known as the best of the best at my job. I want people to need me, to count on me. I'm never late. I'm either early or on time. I want to help people. I want to fight for something, be part of something that is greater than myself. I want to be a soldier or something of that caliber, maybe a cop or a Secret Service agent. I want to live forever. The only way that one could possibly achieve it in this day and age is to live on in those you have affected. I want to carve out a niche for myself in the history books. I want to be remembered for the things I accomplished. I sometimes dream of being a soldier in a war. In this war, I'm helping to liberate people from oppression. In the end, there's a big parade and a monument built to immortalize us in stone. Other times, I envision being a man you see out of the corner of your eye, dressed in black fatigues, entering a building full of terrorists. After everything is completed, I slip out the back, only to repeat this the next time I am called. I might not be remembered in that scenario, but I will have helped people. Again, Michael wrote that in 2000. Following graduation from high school, Michael went to college for a year, and he found out it wasn't taking him where he wanted to go fast enough. And so after making the dean's list, the day after school, he promptly enlisted in the Army and left 1 week later for boot camp. September 11th was inspection day for him at boot camp, final inspection day. And we received his journal of his about mid of September. And I want to quote two things that he wrote in his journal on September 11th. First Sergeant Pauling was right that it was going to be our home where the next war was going to take place, not some distant jungle or desert. Home, the USA. No one messes with the USA, and I cleaned that up for you. He goes on, I'm mad that someone had the nerve to do this, but even more angry that we allowed it to happen. Following boot camp, Michael went to Vilsik, Germany, where he was stationed with the 1st Infantry, Deuce, 2nd Battalion, 2nd Infantry, and there he was part of a Bradley fighting unit. And on his birthday in 2004, he left Iraq with that unit, he left Germany with that unit for Iraq. In Iraq, his unit was separated from the 2-2, paired with a tank unit, and attached to the 82nd Engineers. Confused yet? Try getting a mail. Anyway, they made two very special platoons. They were called the ICE platoons. And they were very special because they had some unique capabilities between the Bradleys and the tank units. Their job in Iraq was open the main highway in Bakuba, and you'll appreciate this, it was the Blue Babe Highway. They cleared it of IEDs, insurgents, and whatever was needed. In addition, they trained Iraqi National Guards, built buildings, and were asked, they were the special force that went in and cordoned off buildings so they could be taken over by whatever means was necessary. When the task was difficult, they called in the ICE platoon. On January 24, 2005, on a dark, rainy, stormy night, Michael's unit was on a mission. On the way to the first checkpoint, the Bradley accident took place. Michael risked his life diving into 42-degree water inside the dark, upside-down Bradley, submersed in water, to open the back hatch. This action enabled his unit quicker access to those inside. Thankfully, they were able to save 2 of the 7 men in that unit. Michael willingly gave his life for his brothers. Of the 7 men in that Bradley, 3 were not born and raised in the USA. 2 were from Mexico, and 1, Victor Yolkin, was born in Belarus, formerly a part of Russia. I'd like to read a short excerpt from a letter I received from his mother. Victor was a very kind, honest, and caring son. We sorely miss him. My husband and I are certain that evil people are unwanted and humanity needs good people like our sons. Our sons were very good, determined, and brave men. Therefore, God placed them together and called them to himself, even though they were very young. It seems that for some reason he needs the presence of our sons. Only this belief can ease us a little. Our son went to the USA for the first time in the summer of 1999 on a study program. He studied at law school in the Minsk, Belarus. He fell in love with America, and next summer in 2000, when he came on again on his summer study program, he decided to stay in America forever. He chose for himself a very difficult life path, but walked it without doubt. He did not want to spend his life cleaning dishes in a restaurant. He wanted to continue his study and become a citizen of America. He had a strong character and always pushed himself to become better. We buried Victor in Germany, in the city where his older brother lives. We were not able to bury him in Belarus due to the political situation. The political organizations in Belarus defame the character of our son in the media. They did this to discourage young people from going and staying in America. If I may, I'd like to tell you about my heroes, Michael's brothers, the men of ICE platoon. I now have 32 more sons. The motto of the first ID is no mission too difficult, no sacrifice too great, duty first. Not only did they dive into that 42-degree water time after time to rescue their brothers, but 2 days later, they summoned all their courage, got back into their fighting vehicles, drove past that site of despair, and completed their mission. The mission was to take out 2 bomb-making factories. Taking them out of commission enabled the January 31 election to happen, much quieter, much safer for the Iraqis' first election. Despite all, despite the pain, the agony, they did their duty, fighting for freedom, for the Iraqis, and for us. These are the type of men and women who serve us in our military. No matter what, they are going to complete their mission, Mike's mission, freedom for all. Today, I'd like to ask a couple of simple things of you. Please, please, vocally support the men and women of our military. They need to know that the people of the United States are with them 110%, and that we will support them until their mission is complete. I ask you also to please support the families of our military. One of the things our soldiers worry about most is that their families are cared for while they are away. I ask you also to find ways to continue to support these fine men and women when they return. All who come back from war have scars. Not all scars are visible. They need time to heal while they put their families' lives together again. And last, but certainly not least, I ask for your prayers. Prayers for the people of Iraq, Afghanistan, and throughout the world, that they all may begin to live in a world without fear, the fear we take for granted. We have lived without that fear for so long. And I ask you to pray for the men and women of our military, that their mission will soon be complete and they will soon be home safe and out of harm's way. Thank you.
Thank you, Merrilee. Mike's spirit certainly does live on, and I can safely say he has affected everyone's lives tonight, so his spirit will continue to live on. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for your eloquence. He is very kind to join us tonight, coming from Spring Valley. Private First Class Lucas Rath, an outstanding man, injured not once but twice in combat in Iraq. On July 20th, 2004, and then again on September the 4th, 2004. For his sacrifices, he has been awarded a Purple Heart. In his correspondence with us, PFC Rath told us he considers it indescribable to have the opportunity to speak at the same event as Senator McCain. Lucas, I bet you Senator McCain feels that same honor. Welcome, PFC Lucas Rath.
Good evening. First of all, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the veterans who've served our country so bravely and sometimes without as much support as what we have had this last time around. Also, I'd like to thank the veterans for the warm welcome that I received along with other soldiers when we first got back. It's because of them that we were able to receive this welcome, and I just want to make sure that they're thanked for that. I was in the military for 23 months. I spent 9 months in Baghdad, Iraq. While there, my battalion was in charge of 3 convoy routes that went into the airport in Baghdad. On an average day, our battalion would find about 3 IEDs on the side of the road. Sometimes we were unfortunate and we found them by them exploding on us, but other times we were lucky enough to find them and detonate them ourselves. We also ran security for the Iraqi people, up to and even after we helped set up the Iraqi security forces. Some of our tasks included setting up checkpoints around schools to help ensure the safety of the Iraqi children. Also, in some cases, escorting the kids to and from school. During elections, we helped set up security and provided security for the voters in Iraq. I was wounded twice in Iraq. The first time while on a dismounted patrol on July 20th, 2004. An RPG struck the front of the vehicle that I was walking near. I was thrown about 20 feet in the air. Luckily, I received moderate amounts of shrapnel. After a week of being unable to patrol with my platoon, I decided it was my turn to get back and be with my friends. My second injury occurred on September 4th, 2004. We were doing a dismounted patrol again along a highway where we're doing security. We'd stopped to help a lady on the side of the road who was injured, and we'd stopped to give her first aid. As soon as we'd stop, we'd set up a perimeter. And as soon as our perimeter is set up, 3 snipers 25 meters away opened fire on me. Luckily, I only received 1 gunshot wound. 2 bullets went into my rucksack, and one grazed my butt pack. Immediately after I was hit, I opened fire. After opening fire, I had my squad leader who came over to my aid, and he gave me first aid while I was returning fire. We are consistently reminded of how many of our soldiers have been wounded or killed in combat. A few days after I was shot, I was laying in a hospital bed in Germany when the news that we had just lost our 1,000th soldier came on. The soldier who had lost his life was my best friend, Clarence Adams. He was a father of 6 children and was killed by an IED on his 27th birthday. Not more than a few weeks ago, the death toll surpassed 2,000. What disheartens me most is that most Americans do not know the story behind the Americans that have given the ultimate sacrifice. It's not enough to say, what a waste, and it's too bad. Not one of the soldiers' lives that we've lost is a waste. Whether you agree with what our soldiers are doing or not, please do not look at the number and say that's too bad. We all have the choice to help in any way possible. Please do not forget about us veterans and what we have done. It's a choice that all of us have made, and we're all proud of making it. Thank you.
Well said. Thank you, Lucas. I assure you we will not forget. Nobody in this room will forget, and Minnesotans will not forget. As far as we know, Minnesota is one of the only, if not the only state in the nation with a program like this. We are a progressive state. What we're doing tonight has caught the attention and the appreciation of individuals nationwide. Hopefully this is the start of something big, the start of a trend, a tidal wave of appreciation, including our next presenter. We are delighted and honored this evening to be joined by a very special guest, General James Lipscomb, the recently retired General of the state of Mississippi. In that role, General Lipscomb was responsible for organizing, training, and equipping more than 13,000 citizen soldiers and airmen of the Mississippi National Guard to perform its federal and state missions. In recent years, General Lipscomb has served on the board of directors of this evening's lead sponsor, Federated Insurance Companies, based right here in Owatonna, Minnesota. When he learned from Federated's chairman and CEO, Al Annexstad, about the mission of the Minnesotans Military Appreciation Fund, he asked if he might share a brief word from the heart with all of us here tonight. Of course, we are very honored that he would make the trip and make the effort to share his thoughts with us tonight. General Lipscomb.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's quite an honor for me to be able to be here tonight to say a word of thanks and to be able to listen to the story of Mrs. Carlson about her son and PFC Rath, about their story, about their military story. Having had the opportunity and the privilege to serve as the Adjutant General of the Mississippi National Guard, those 13,000 men and women who during the time that I was there went through the largest mobilization of the Army and Air National Guard with over 5,000 soldiers, airmen, men and women called to duty to serve in operations Iraqi Freedom, Operation Enduring Freedom, and Operation Noble Eagle. Those people made great sacrifices, and the 2.8 million people who live in the state of Mississippi have been most appreciative for those efforts. I had the opportunity as the Adjutant General to travel literally around the world to visit soldiers of the Mississippi National Guard who served not only in combat zones but in other areas of the world such as the Balkans, and to see the strength and the courage that they demonstrated as they served alongside of their fellow brothers and sisters from the state of Minnesota, to see how strong that they were, and to listen and to talk and to return and to listen to the sacrifices that those many families have made for our men and women of the greatest military in known history, to serve you and to serve me and to protect the freedoms that we have and that we hold so dear to our hearts. And not only do we see in combat zones what goes on with our soldiers and our airmen and our men and women, but we also have seen just in the recent weeks past what great sacrifices that those men and women of the military are called upon to do in natural disasters right here in our own country. As we watched Hurricane Katrina and Hurricane Rita literally destroy our great state of Mississippi and our great state of Louisiana. And to see that many of those soldiers, those people that served in those duty requirements, were people that also served in Operation Iraqi Freedom, that served in Iraq during the war and after the war. Again, to see the adjustments and the readjustments that their families and that they had to make as they come back and they return to civilian duty as citizens of our great country, and to see that those readjustments from those constant deployments and redeployments, what a toll it takes. What a toll it takes, not only from the heart and mentally, but what a tremendous financial toll that we're seeing that our people from the military are suffering today. The generosity of the people of the state of Mississippi, state of Minnesota, is fantastic. We're generous in Mississippi too, but to see the thousands of dollars that were sent to the victims of Hurricane Katrina by the people of Minnesota, the food, the supplies, other financial resources that you have provided, I'm here to say thank you. I'm here to say thank you to those soldiers, those Minnesota soldiers, who along with so many others have been so brave and done so much. And at the same time to tell you that this effort that you're putting forth tonight is in fact something that will attract attention across this entire United States. And your state has been one that has been known for its generosity, for its sharing. And I can tell you that our people in our military, and particularly their families, need everything that you have the capability to do to put together and to do for them. And hopefully what you're seeing tonight will be the beginning of a movement. And although we have a generous government, and we have a government that does believe that freedom is not free, the things that our government does for our veterans is simply not enough. And it will take each and every one of us as American citizens to do what must be done for those that have made the sacrifice, and for those families of those members who have made the ultimate sacrifice. I thank you so much for the opportunity to thank you for what you've done for the people of Mississippi, and to thank you for what you are trying, and I'm certain will succeed in doing for all of those many people in our great military. Remember, the greatest military in the world is the one that represents the United States of America, because they know, as your governor said, freedom is not free. May God bless the United States of America and the great state of Minnesota. Thank you very much.
Thank you, General, and thank you for making the trip up here. We appreciate that. Thank you for your words of wisdom. Before dinner, it is my pleasure to introduce the MMAF co-founder, one of the gentlemen who made this possible tonight, talk about vision. Please welcome Gene Sitt. Gene?
Thank you, Paul. I would like to tell you a little about the how and why of the Minnesotans Military Appreciation Fund, also known as MMAF. As some of you know, Jack Vessey and I are good friends. He and I serve a number of common interests, the most important of which is that we both have a love for our country, and that says a lot. With that, Jack and I started to talk about the sacrifices of our men and women in Afghanistan and in Iraq, and the noble efforts of our Minnesota soldiers. Although I try to keep informed, I was very surprised to learn how minimal the current federal death benefits and disability benefits are. You heard a little bit from the families and one of our soldiers who have served on our behalf. And even those soldiers who are fortunate enough to return alive and uninjured carry the burden of the mental stress of combat for the rest of their lives. This war is quite different than the other wars that some of you have served in or have read about. It is unprecedented from the standpoint that perhaps we have 0.5% of all the American people of service age serving in this conflict to protect our freedom. Back in the 1940s and World War II is probably 1 in 3. In addition, about 1/3 of all the troops in Afghanistan and Iraq are reservists, Guard members, and other citizen soldiers, if you will. In Minnesota, up to now, over 5,000 Minnesotans have already served in combat. And as you know, in August, another 2,600 of them have been called up to duty. So they are making the sacrifices while you and I are enjoying the good life here in America and in Minnesota. As you heard, our Minnesota military personnel and their families deserve our appreciation and our help in meeting their financial needs. I wanted a way that we can all say thanks to these men and women, these friends and neighbors of ours who are serving in our country. So that was the catalyst about 1.5 years ago. I asked a number of my good friends, and many of them in this room here, and I thank you for being part of this effort. So I put this group of very patriotic Minnesotans who believe in this mission of saying thanks to our fellow Minnesotans who serve or have served in this war. And that to ensure that this remains a nonpartisan and focus on saying thanks and not about supporting or not supporting the war, I approached Minnesota's top political and business leaders across the political spectrum. You will note in the program that our leadership group includes many of our leading citizens from our community. The Minnesotans Military Appreciation Fund was subsequently formed. It is a 501c3 non-profit corporation, the first of its kind, dedicated to say thanks to help our troops. It is bipartisan, it is non-governmental, and it's volunteer-run. The key objectives for our missions include, one, as a way to say thank you, we will provide financial grants to Minnesotans who have served in the war in a combat zone since 9/11/2001. We will provide larger grant amounts to Minnesotans wounded in the war and the families of Minnesotans killed in the war. Our tax-free grants, while seemingly small, do make a difference, as I found out when we visited with 2 of our grantees, wounded soldiers, last week. Most importantly, what we are doing represent, and as Paul said earlier, truly represent an embodiment of our Minnesota value.
What we are is a citizens' effort to boost military morale and to say thanks to our troops. Thank you.
Thank you, Gene. Thank you for your vision and your tenacity, and for your friends who were able to turn that vision into a reality tonight. Please, everybody, enjoy tonight's dinner. As you do, please take a few moments to pass around and take a look at the MREs. Have you seen these yet? On your table? As you enjoy a wonderful Hilton dinner, I'm hoping you can check this out and remember why we're here tonight. It's what a great number of our fellow Minnesotans are dining on tonight. We'll see you in about a half an hour and resume the program. Thank you, everybody. In recent months, the organizers behind MMAF have spent a lot of time meeting, getting to know soldiers now overseas, their families, and many soldiers who have returned home. They've put together this video which shares some of the stories. As you enjoy the rest of your dinner and your dessert, as you watch this, please know that every single person you see in this video is a Minnesotan, a proud Minnesotan. Let's watch together.
Hey, you remember how it was when the boys began coming home in 45? Parades, cheers, backslapping. Nothing's too good for our boys. Thanks, fellas, for a tough job well done.
After every war, we've done things differently. We're learning from our past. One Vietnam-era vet shared that in 35 years, there have only been 2 people that have said, thank you.
If something happens, if you leave somebody behind, you don't leave anybody behind. You make sure everybody's accounted for.
You learn how to do stuff, and when you're disabled and you can't do it, you learn it fast.
My dad's a police officer, and my grandpa was in the military. My best friend was in the Marines. When I heard the word about Iraq and everything else, my goal to him was I was going to join because I didn't want him to go over Iraq by himself.
Yeah, I believe there is a need for a private organization, private funding to help out soldiers and families that are injured while they're in Iraq.
The biggest hardship for us was after I got injured. I spent 2 months in the hospital in Fort Lewis, Washington, and my wife had to leave work to come out there and be with me. She was with me the whole time.
There's so many soldiers, active, discharged, and disabled, that for some reason or another have missed out on the ceremonies, the awards, the validation that each and every soldier so richly deserve. The thing that you're doing, this recognition to these soldiers, is unprecedented. The people of Minnesota have raised the bar. Let's see if the rest of the states can accept this challenge to thank their hometown heroes too.
Not being able to work, not being able to function with 2 arms. My arm goes numb daily. I have pain spurts down my arm. And coming home, I still get respect here. It's just, I can't function. Can't work, can't do anything. And it's hard, but you gotta learn to live with what you got.
Keep up the support. It goes miles over here. Hope to be home soon.
The grant you've offered to service members is greatly appreciated. It's always wonderful to hear that folks back home have us in their thoughts.
I'll feel selfish if I fill out this application. I know there are so many others here doing a tougher job than I am. It brings tears to my eyes whenever a complete stranger says thank you. I never knew there were so many great people out there who care so much.
The time apart. The time apart's really hard. She had to raise both of the boys by herself and go to school full time, so.
Where I got hit a lot harder than most people because I had a construction company before I left. I did, lose the company, obviously, which had it for 3 years and was pretty successful. And, just over that hump, if anybody who runs a small business knows what that first couple of years means.
The question that I think Eugene sit and the organization is trying to answer is, what is it that we as Minnesotans can do to pitch in?
And my main goal is possibly to start working full-time in February if I have my surgery soon. And the only reason why I can actually work full-time is because my friend, the one who's a Marine, his uncle is opening an armored car business. He offered me a job right away. He said, I know you're injured, I know you're disabled, you want to work for me? And most people won't do that.
Whatever our views now about what we should be doing or how we should do it, there should be no disagreement whatsoever in terms of our respecting and wanting to support and appreciate these young men and women.
When my grandma told me about the Thank Minnesota Troops thing, that was probably the biggest thing right there for me, is that gave me hope and everything that Minnesota actually cares.
As you can see, it is not easy for a soldier who served so honorably for his country is having problem struggling to dress himself. So the realities of war are not pleasant. The soldier, the disabled soldier featured in this video is Sergeant Jensen. And he is here with us tonight. Sergeant Jensen, would you please stand and let us recognize you? Thank you. I have the unique honor of introducing our next speaker, General John Vessey, Jr. As I mentioned earlier, the Vesseys and the Sits are good friends. In fact, both Avis and Jack are our heroes. And as I mentioned again earlier, both of us have this real love for our country. Let me tell you a little bit about Jack. First, when he retired from the Army in October 1985, he had served longer than anyone in the U.S. Army, 46 years of active service. He joined the Minnesota National Guard in 1939 as a private and retired as a four-star general, with his final assignment as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Here's what President Reagan said about General Vessey upon his retirement at that ceremony, and I quote, "He will be remembered as a man of patriotism and deep religious belief, an officer who brought character and credit to every billet he ever held, as a military leader who always spoke his mind to civilian authority, but he did it respectfully and candidly. As the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who presided over the restoration of America's military strength and power at a moment critical to the fate of freedom and his country's security. In all these things, he bore the marks of greatness," end quote. And President Reagan further added that, and I quote, "He always remembered the soldiers in the ranks. He understood those soldiers are the backbone of any army. He noticed them, spoke to them, and looked out for them. Jack Vessey never forgot what it's like to be an enlisted man, to be just a GI," end quote. The Vesseys returned to northern Minnesota about this time in 1985, or about 20 years ago. But before he could identify or the great walleye fishing holes on lower whitefish. He was asked by President Reagan, again, to be his presidential emissary to Hanoi, a post that Presidents Bush #1, and Clinton asked that he continue upon their taking office. In that assignment, he worked to rescue the remains of servicemen listed as missing in action, i.e. the MIA situation left over from Vietnam. Sought the release of all former South Vietnamese military and government officials, helped to reunite separated Vietnamese families, and got many of the American children from the war era out of Vietnam, and helped to develop our country's humanitarian aid program for that country, which led to the normalization of relationship today. Additionally, while supposedly in retirement, he has carried out and continued to carry out diplomatic assignments and mission and has advised several presidents. Today, he continues to serve on several military commissions and board. His recognitions are numerous, and in addition, being a recipient of numerous U.S. and foreign decorations and awards, President Bush in 1992 awarded Jack Vessey our nation's highest civilian award, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome a great American, my good friend, Jack Vessey.
Thank you. Thanks. Thanks for the welcome. Most importantly, thanks for allowing me to be a part of this wonderful Veterans Day event, saying thanks to Minnesota's most recent veterans. Thanks to the organizers, the workers, and the volunteers of the Minnesota Military Appreciation Fund. I want to say a special thanks to Eugene Sitt, whose dream this was, the idea of saying thanks to Minnesota's military people. Great American, a great member of the community, born in China, but he wears red, white, and blue underwear. A special thanks to all you supporters of the Minnesotans Military Appreciation Fund who are here tonight, those who couldn't be here, and most importantly, thanks to all of you veterans of the recent wars and your families for the sacrifices and services that you perform for this country at difficult times. Now, my assigned duty for this evening, and my most welcome duty for this evening, is to introduce to you a fellow veteran. John McCain comes from a Navy family. Both his father and grandfather were distinguished, highly decorated four-star admirals in the United States Navy. Like his father and grandfather, he too is a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy. He was a naval aviator, flying missions over North Vietnam from an aircraft carrier. He was shot down over Hanoi in 1967, wounded severely, and injured even more so during the ejection from his catastrophically damaged A-4. He parachuted into one of Hanoi's lakes, was pulled from the lake, and despite his injuries, was severely beaten more by his captives. All of that was followed by 5 years and 5.5 years in the infamous Hoa Lo prison, often referred to as the Hanoi Hilton, including 2 years of which were in solitary confinement. And he got a lot of firsthand knowledge about what happens when a nation doesn't abide by the Geneva Convention and tortures its prisoners. During his confinement, his own father was appointed as the Commander-in-Chief of the United States Pacific Command, with authority over that vast area, including the war in Southeast Asia. In a political ploy, the North Vietnamese government offered John McCain early release. He refused and insisted that the prisoners be released in the order in which they were captured in accord with international law. He was released with the other prisoners in 1973. He worked to resume his career as a naval aviator. When it became clear that his wartime injuries would not permit the sort of operational commands at sea required to move up in the Navy, he regrettably retired from the Navy in 1981, a highly decorated, highly regarded hero with the rank of captain. He left the Navy on the day his father was buried in Arlington. I didn't know John McCain during his active military career, but I knew of him. In the latter years of the war in Southeast Asia, I was a young brigadier charged with the responsibility for gluing together all the U.S. effort going into the war in Laos. Admiral McCain was my boss. And much of the time, I felt that Admiral McCain was the only person in the whole Defense Department who had any idea of the difficulty and complexity of the mission I had been assigned. My best days in Laos were the days when Admiral McCain visited. He was a great commander in a very difficult time, and I admired him greatly. After John left the Navy, he moved to Arizona and was elected to the Congress. In 1986, he successfully ran for the Senate seat that Barry Goldwater had vacated, and he's been in the United States Senate since that time. In 1992, the Senate formed a select committee to look into the fates of U.S. prisoners of war and those missing in action from the Southeast Asian War. During those years, I was serving as the President's emissary to Hanoi to try to negotiate a resolution to those same issues with the Vietnamese government. John McCain was a member of that Senate Select Committee. It was then that I got to know him and witnessed personally his courage, his strength of character, and his unwavering search for the truth, despite scathing personal attacks on him and his character and considerable other obstacles in that search for truth. I had heard of his wartime bravery and respected it, but it was during those difficult, tense hearings that I learned that he truly was cut from the same bolt of cloth as his great father. He's been labeled the straight-talk senator. Let me give you a little example of why. In October of 1992, less than a month before the elections in which he was a candidate for re-election, President Bush 41 asked Senator McCain to accompany me on another trip to Hanoi to look into the latest of the unending series of strange stories about American POWs that might be left from the war. Despite the disruption in his closely contested re-election campaign, he agreed to do what the president asked to do and went with me. When we went on that trip, by that time, we had been able to establish an office in Hanoi, and we were greeted at the airport by my troops in Hanoi. And I asked them to take us, and with the senator, and take him by the statue of him that's on the shore of the lake into which he parachuted when he was captured. And it's a crappy statue. It has a bronze representation of an American aviator in an obsequious position, and then it has him duly identified as an air pirate. But the ultimate insult is here is this naval aviator, this carrier pilot, being identified as a major in the United States Air Force on this statue. The next morning, our first call was on the Prime Minister of Vietnam. And we went into the throne room and we're seated there, and the Prime Minister said, you know, Senator, we have a statue of you here in Hanoi. And Senator McCain then gave me the best moment of my 6 years of going back and forth to Hanoi. He said, yes, Mr. Prime Minister, I saw it yesterday, and it's a mess. It's all covered with bird crap, and it's filthy dirty. And I want to say I cleaned up the language a little bit. And I'm not coming back here ever again until you get that thing cleaned up. Well, I know you didn't come here to listen to me talk about Senator McCain, but I could go on for a long time about him. But a man that I greatly respect, a great hero, a veteran, and also happens to be the senior senator from the state of Arizona. Please help me in welcoming the Honorable John McCain.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you for your kind welcome. Thank you very much, General Vessey, for your wonderful introduction. Gene Sitt, thank you for your spirit and your motivation and your efforts in making this wonderful organization possible. I would like to, of course, recognize a number of people who are here tonight that I have had the privilege of knowing over the years, and Bill Frenzel, who I miss him every day in the Congress because he had some great sense of physical discipline, which is missing today. And Bill, thank you for being here. I believe my old and beloved friend Rudy Boschwitz is here. Rudy, thank you for everything you continue to do. You know, Trent Lott found out that Harry Truman was right when he said, if you want a friend in Washington, go out and buy a dog. And things have not gotten better over the years that I have been there. And there's an individual here whose legacy today lives on in the United States Senate for respect, for generosity, for warmth, for compassion, and collegiality, and really smart, and very dedicated, and that's Fritz Mondale, who I've been privileged to get to know over the years. And a truly remarkable example that in politics you can differ and disagree with passion, but you can also treat your adversaries with the respect that they deserve. I know of no one who practiced it as well and as honorably as Fritz Mondale did. And I would like to say that I believe that I must tell you something you know, and you can be proud of the people that you have sent to serve the state of Minnesota in our nation's capital. Many names spring to mind, including that of Hubert Humphrey. And I'm happy to tell you that you have two senators who have carried on in that tradition. And I'd like to make mention, first of all, of Mark Dayton, who I happen to have the privilege of serving with on the Armed Services Committee. He has a passion and a commitment to the men and women who serve in our military. He has served honorably in the United States Senate. It's been a pleasure for me to work with him. Thank you, Mark, for all you have done. I'm grateful. And I'd very much like, of course, to mention my good friend, Norm Coleman, who is probably now been voted Miss Congeniality at the United Nations this year. I'm sure you're welcome up there anytime, Norm. Norm dislikes corruption, and he believes that the American taxpayers' dollars in the United Nations should function without corruption and with efficiency. He's done a magnificent job in that and many other areas, and I thank you, Norm, for your great job as Senator, and it's been a privilege to serve with you. It's hard for me to describe the feeling I have for General Vessey because it's very rare in my life that I've had the opportunity of getting to know someone with his incredible integrity and service. And every time I am around military people, somehow General Vessey's name comes up, and I hear another story about General Vessey, and they are legion. And by the way, you might not know that his battlefield commission that he won when he was a private in the Minnesota National Guard at Salerno was a near disaster. Our landing at Salerno, it turned into a charnel house, a carnage, and General Vessey, after so many around him were killed, led his troops and, of course, was awarded a battlefield commission. But my favorite story about General Vessey, if I could just tell you, and I don't want to prolong the evening too long, but when he was serving as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff under President Reagan, the decision was made to invade Grenada to rid it of some Cuban presence that was there. And I won't go into all the details, but the invasion, the operation was to take place at night. And it started out with some paratroop drops, et cetera. So General Vessey was over at the White House in the Situation Room, and the briefing by the very eager staff of the White House were telling President Reagan, and this is going to happen exactly this, and you can be in direct contact with the battlefield by phone, and we'll have instant communication, instant updates with everything that is happening. And General Vessey, of course, was sitting there and not having much to say, and finally the briefing ended, and President Reagan said, well, General Vessey, what are you going to do? General Vessey said, well, I'm going to bed. President Reagan said, well, I'm going to bed too. Both General Vessey and President Reagan got up the next morning, and the operation was complete in Grenada and a complete success. So you know, it's a very amusing story, but it also has a lot to say about the relationship between superiors and subordinates and confidence in the ability of your people to complete the mission, et cetera. And again, General, I want to thank you for your kind introduction. It's far nicer than the one I got at the Scottsdale Rotary Club the other day, where the guy said, here's the latest dope from Washington, Senator John McCain. And I've been asked by Gene Sitt to give you the good news and the bad news here tonight. We've now got enough money, thanks to the good news is we now have enough money to fund the entire Military Appreciation Fund. The bad news is some of that money is still in your wallets and purses, so please keep that in mind before you leave tonight. General Vessey did point out that it doesn't take a lot of talent to get shot down. General Vessey, I was able to intercept a surface-to-air missile with my own airplane, which is, I believe, McNamara's way of winning the Vietnam War, as I recall. Barry Goldwater was my campaign chairman when I ran to succeed him on an election night. Barry got a little nostalgic, and he said, you know, John, he said, if I'd have been elected president in 1964 and beaten Lyndon Johnson, you'd have never spent all those years in a Vietnamese prison camp. I said, you're right, Barry, it would have been a Chinese prison camp. He was not amused by that at all. But I'm deeply moved to be tonight among a group of patriots who have distinguished yourselves in service to our country. For most of us, it's been many years since we wore the uniform. But it's still the opinion of those who wore the uniform that matters most to us. It's an honor to speak to you on Veterans Day and share with all of you an honor we learned about in America, but experienced in someone else's country. It's a great honor of knowing your duty and ransoming your life to its accomplishment. I was blessed, as General Vessey pointed out, to have been born into a family who made their living at sea in defense of their country's cause. My grandfather was a naval aviator, my father a submariner. They were my first heroes, and their respect for me has been the most lasting ambition of my life. It was nearly preordained that I would someday find a place in my family's profession, and that my fate would carry me to war. Such was not the case for some of you here tonight. Your ambitions did not lead you to war. The honors you first sought were not kept hidden on battlefields. Most of you were citizen soldiers. You answered the call when it came, took up arms for your country's sake, and fought to the limit of your ability because you believed your country's welfare was as much your responsibility as it was the professional soldiers. I did what I had been prepared for most of my life to do. You did what I did, but without the advantages of training and experience that I possessed. You were kids when you saw combat. I was 30 years old. I believe you outranked me. I don't mean to dismiss the virtues of the professional soldier. I consider my inclusion in their ranks to be the great honor of my life. The Navy was and yet remains the world I know best and love most. As veterans, we celebrate a common bond that is often difficult to explain. It is in part a pride for having sacrificed together for a cause greater than our individual pursuits, pride for having your courage and honor tested and affirmed in a fearsome moment of history, pride for having replaced comfort and security with misery and deprivation and not been broken by the experience. We also share, and this is harder to explain, the survivor's humility. That's a provocative statement, I know, and the non-veteran may easily mistake its meaning. I'm not talking about shame. I know of no shame in surviving combat, but every combat veteran remembers those comrades whose sacrifice was eternal. Their loss taught us everything about tragedy and everything about duty. I suspect that at one time or another, almost all of our veterans here tonight have been called a hero for having done their duty. It's at that moment that we feel most keenly the memory of our comrades who did not return with us to the country we love so dearly. I cannot help but wince a little when heroism is ascribed to me, for I once watched men pay a much higher price for that honor than was asked of me. I'm grateful, as we all are, to have come home alive. I pray daily for deliverance from war. No one of my acquaintances ever chose death over homecoming, but I witnessed some men choose death over dishonor. The memory of them and what they bore for our country and honor helped me to see the virtue in my own humility. It is in that humility, and only in that humility, that the memory of almost all human experiences, love and hate, loss and redemption, joy and despair, suffering and release, regret and gratitude reside. In the end, that's the secret that veterans share. It's a surpassing irony that war, for all its unspeakable horrors, provides the combatant with every conceivable human experience. Experiences that usually take a lifetime to know are all felt and felt intensely in one brief moment of life. Anyone who loses a loved one knows what great loss feels like. Anyone who gives life to a child knows what great joy feels like. The veteran knows what great joy and great loss feel like when they occur in the same moment, in the same experience. That's why when we're asked about our time at war, we often offer the contradictory response that it was an experience that, if given the choice, we would neither trade nor repeat. The meaning behind that response is powerful, and I fear that my own powers of expression have failed to explain it clearly. For my part, I would simply affirm that the sacrifices borne by veterans deserve to be memorialized in something more lasting than marble or bronze or in the fleeting effect of a politician's speech. Your valor and your devotion to duty have earned your country's abiding concern for your well-being. I am, I assure you, committed to honoring that debt. Let me talk to you now of what you gave your country, the contribution for which the nation is in your debt. It's more than battles you won, more than Iwo Jima or Midway or the Battle of the Bulge, more than the Chosin Reservoir or Incheon, more than the flights over that most heavily defended enemy capital, Hanoi, more than Khe Sanh or the Ai Drang. All these battles, all these grim tests of courage and character have made a legend of the American fighting man's devotion to duty in every community in America. And it is the lesson of your courage that will help instruct those who defend our country today. For they will seek to immortalize in their own devotion to duty your valor and the long and noble history of a free people's defense of their liberty. Their character will be derived in part from their appreciation of your character. I am grateful for our wonderful military. I visited Iraq and Afghanistan and heard firsthand accounts of Marine firefights in Fallujah and armored cavalry battles in Tal Afar so fierce that it takes your breath away. I visited our brave servicemen and women at Walter Reed and Bethesda Naval Hospital. Each one told me they wanted to return to their unit quickly. I have grieved at funerals and memorial services for those who have paid the ultimate price. The memory of their sacrifice and the memories of sacrifice that are held by all of you caution us always to never assume that peace is the normal state of world affairs. But liberating Iraq was in our strategic and moral interests, and we must honor their sacrifice by seeing this mission through to victory. You and I know how great an honor it is to have served America in uniform. We must continue to serve by demonstrating strong support for military service, for those serving now, and for those who may want to serve in the future. Young men and women will learn courage from your good character. They will learn from your love for something greater than yourself. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. I'm going to go off script here for just a second. Just a personal comment. You are one of a small handful of men who has restored my faith in the political process. Some of those men are here tonight, but you are in a class of your own. You are a warrior, you're a statesman, you're a scholar, and I appreciate you standing up for the environment, something that's near and dear to my heart, climate change, acknowledging the obvious. Thank you for having the courage to vote your convictions and protect our country in the process. And I feel like a groupie. I have his latest book. My sophomore in high school, Brett, wants very much to go to the Naval Academy. And I was touched when I read this, and I picked this up for Brett. Character is destiny. Inspiring stories every young person should know and every adult should remember. Run, don't walk. Run, go out, buy this book. It is remarkable. Well done. Thank you, Senator. My news director is hoping for a little breaking news tonight. 2008, we can only wait, wonder, and hope. My father told me that the measure of a man is not what he has, but what he gives. You and the other brave men and women in this room worldwide have given the ultimate gift. You've given much back, and we take nothing for granted. Eleanor Roosevelt once said that the future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. And we have some dreamers and doers in this room tonight, some modern-day American heroes in our midst. And we honor you, we salute you, we will never, ever forget your contribution. Thank you. Please join me in welcoming Al Annexstad. He's president and CEO of the Federated Insurance Companies down in Owatonna. Al is a member of the Board of Overseers, and Federated Insurance is a lead sponsor of MMAF. And joining Al, a familiar face, Eugene Sitt, Chairman, CEO, and CIO of Sitt Investment Association in Minneapolis. Gene is the founder of MMAF. His family and firm are the official sponsors of MMAF. Again, Al and Gene, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate that. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. What an extraordinary evening this has been. It's been one of the nicest 3 hours I've spent in the last 25 years to see what's going on here. Thank you again, Senator McCain, for your inspiring message. You are really the best of the best. When I listen to your life and your service to our country, are once a reminder of what we all have in stake in preserving defending freedom in our country. A sincere thanks to General Vessey. It was great to see you up here tonight. What a marvelous job you did. General Lipscomb from Mississippi, PFC Lucas Rath, and to the family of Sergeant Michael Carlson for your sacrifices and your service to our country. Your words will always be remembered by the people in this audience. Thank you, Governor Pawlenty. I had a voicemail from him a couple days ago, really wanting to be here tonight, but he's over in China, as we all know. The governor, we all know, would like to have you and Mary, of course, would like to have been here this evening. We wish you all the well in representing Minnesota in your trade mission to China. May you and your fellow Minnesotans have a successful and safe trip. A special thanks also to you, our business community, military and political leaders, for joining us tonight and for sharing in our desire to make Minnesota military people much better off. I would certainly be remiss if I did not acknowledge the great American standing next to me, my good friend, Gene Sitt. It was Gene's vision, as we've heard many times tonight, and passion to establish the Minnesota Military Appreciation Fund and to put this evening together. Gene and his team have made a resounding statement of their love of country and their deep gratitude for the military members and families of the great state of Minnesota. Thank you, Gene. Let's give another round of applause. But certainly our deepest gratitude this evening goes to our service members and their families. That's really why we're here tonight, to honor these people and honor future people coming back from where they're at today in Afghanistan and Iraq. Your courage and sacrifice for the cause of freedom place us forever in your debt. Our hearts go out to those of you joining us tonight and to our service members and their families wherever they might be. Governor Pawlenty reminds us many times, freedom isn't free, not at all. This is why tonight we ask that you reach deep in your pockets and your hearts and your wallets to show our gratitude to these military members and their families, all from the great state of Minnesota. Most of us grew up here, and we got these people representing us all over the world and fighting hard so we could be here tonight to have a dinner like this. I was talking to Glenn Taylor just a few days ago and Mark Davis. 40 years ago, I got out of college. Married, a couple of kids. Now I have 6 grandchildren. And isn't it great that these kids can be in freedom and live in America because of people from our state who are battling every day for that freedom? So I think about that, and I think this evening your pledges, and Gene has some other thoughts about that.
Well, thank you, Al. I just want to briefly touch on 3 subjects. Number 1, refresh your memory in terms of the needs that we have. Number 2, just to share with you the personal experience that a couple of us had last week when we went out and made our first grants to 2 wounded soldiers. And thirdly, just to share a thought with you in terms, as you think about helping us, what guidelines you might want to consider. Number 1, first, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of the needs, 5,000 Minnesotans have already served. These are Guard members, reservists, and active duties who are maintaining Minnesota residents. Additionally, 2,600 have been called up and will be assigned to duty. Secondly, these are hardworking citizens, neighbors, members of our communities, and they are making the sacrifices, defending our freedoms and the security and opportunities that we have. Thirdly, we recognize that a number of you, as good employers, are already helping military personnel who are members of your organization. But please keep in mind, a number of the others are not so privileged. So therefore, help us in any way you can. Your help does make a difference. Secondly, the personal experience of making those grants last week. As I said, I had the pleasure of personally delivering grants to 2 recipients thus far, and we will be doing more. Up to now, we have received 700 grant requests. And our priority now, subject to how much money we can raise, we will take care of the wounded soldiers first, and then likewise help the families of the killed in action. And then hopefully by the end of the year, as we get a better feel in terms of what we're able to do, give small grants to every soldier who served in combat. As I said, both of these grant recipients were injured soldiers. Both were wounded twice in combat. Both endured long rehab periods. There were family sacrifices and financial predicaments. I can tell you that our grants did make a difference, or will make a difference. Our grants probably kept these soldiers from further financial distress. And I know from personally being with them and their families that our grants lifted their spirits, reinforced their dreams and hopes, and that the people in Minnesota care and appreciate our military friends and neighbors. The last topic, in terms of some thoughts on your help for us and for our troops. First question is, how do you, or how should you, value the commitment and dedications, the service to our country of our Minnesota military personnel? Let me give you a couple of thoughts. First, if you can give us a grant of $25,000 over 3 years, that is equal to only $1, a $1 gift to each soldier who has served in combat since 9/11. Second, a gift of $100,000 over 3 years equals $4 a gift per soldier. And for the business community, the challengers, that if you can give us $10 per soldier, then you would be like Al and me as leading sponsors of this organization. Nevertheless, your gift should reflect your heartfelt appreciation for our Minnesota military personnel. I thank those who have already made generous donations and contributions, but I call on everyone to help us to the utmost. Al?
Thank you, Gene. Thank you, Gene. At your table, you'll find a pledge card and an envelope. A note to the business leaders in the room: if you wish to make a contribution but would like to first discuss this with your leadership team back home or your board of directors, just make a note on the piece of paper and put it in the envelope, and we'll pick them up. Otherwise, at each table, there may be a person designated to collect the envelopes, and if not, please leave one at the door as you're walking out. Have a safe trip home. It's been a great evening. God bless all of you. Thank you much.
Thank you, Eugene. Thank you, Al. Thank you for your vision again and for setting the bar high for the rest of us. Something you said, Al, that really struck a chord. My father grew up in East Germany and fled to the West, fled over the wall, and he took me aside when I was 12 and he said, "Paul, don't ever, ever take your freedom for granted. So many Americans take their freedom for granted. I do not take what we have in this country for granted, like so many immigrants to this country." So thank you, and thank you, Eugene, for honoring the veterans that certainly don't take freedom for granted. I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. It has been a terrific evening, and you honor us with your presence tonight. As you fill out your pledge cards, being as generous as humanly possible, we will close the evening with another performance from the Metropolitan Boys Choir. Thank you again. Please keep the men and women serving our nation in Iraq, Afghanistan, Kuwait, the far corners of the earth, in your prayers and in your thoughts. God bless you. Good night, everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the retirement of our colors.